Sorry, is it UMC?
Yes.
Yes.
Say something to us all.
Sure thing, just speaking to you today. Here, going to talk about fair pay agreements. Sound okay? Oh, alright, sounds good, thank you. I'm speaking today about fair pay agreements. All good? Thank you. Alright. It is, yeah, it's a very nice touch. Yeah, absolutely. Just enjoy the shot. Thank you. All good to go. All right, kia ora koutou everyone. Thank you so much for coming along today. I think we're all ready to get started today. So I'd like to firstly welcome you all to this lovely space, the Unitarian Church, and I'd like to acknowledge the church for hosting us today. Thank you very much to the team there. Thank you to Clay and Rachel in particular, and also to Paul. Thank you very much for helping out with the live streaming as well. So welcome whether you're here in person or whether you're watching on the live stream currently as well. Thank you very much for giving up some time on your Sunday to be here as we have this important conversation about fair pay agreements. My name is Melissa Ansell-Bridges. I'm the Secretary of the New Zealand Council of Trade Unions, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today on Speak Up Sunday as we encourage and celebrate working people speaking up, using their voices and fighting to improve working conditions in New Zealand. Obviously, today is also May Day. It wasn't a coincidence that we chose today. And so I'd like to wish everyone here, everyone watching from home, everyone, in fact, who is a working person anywhere in the world, a very happy May Day, and would like to acknowledge the work that working people do on a daily basis to, keep society safe and happy and well and moving ahead. And I think that the last couple of years, in particular with the COVID pandemic, have really shown us how much the work of particularly essential workers, but all work is important to society, to our day-to-day existence, and when that stops, things can go awry, and how important it is that we have people driving our buses and stocking our supermarket shelves and looking after our young kids and cleaning to keep us all safe and well. And I would just really like to take a moment to acknowledge, in particular on this May Day, on this International Workers' Day, the work of those essential workers over the last couple of years. Thank you very much. So today, the purpose of this is to hand over 1,100 written submissions, which working people have taken the time to pull together, which is a huge effort. And I'd also just like to point out that whilst we have over 1,100 already, they're still pouring in. So, Minister, you can expect many more than that before submissions close. And I'd just like to put a plug out. You've still got a couple more weeks. If you haven't written a submission yet, then we would absolutely encourage you to do that. You can do that on the CTU's digital platform Together. You can also do that on the ETU website and on the NZEI website if you're a member of one of those unions as well, or if you work in one of those industries. So there are lots of options for where you can make written submissions. Only do it once though. And then they will all go through to the select committee and they will hear submissions from all around the country. The stories that we have heard from working people in those written submissions have been incredibly moving and really show us, I think, how absolutely important it is that we secure great fair pay agreement legislation, that we can all start collectively bargaining across industries to improve terms and conditions for for all working people, especially, in those key essential industries that we've seen, the absolute value of over the last couple of years, and where, unfortunately, the terms and conditions, the pay, the treatment of those workers just isn't good enough, and it really doesn't reflect the incredibly important work that those people do on a daily basis, which I know everyone here appreciates fully. But yeah, it's such an important and exciting opportunity that we have now with this legislation coming through. So I would like to thank all of you for coming along here today. I would like to thank in particular you, Minister, for all of your work on fair pay agreements to date, and for all of the work that will be underway in the next couple of months to secure this legislation. What we have today is a bit of a taster of some workers, some union members here who are going to tell their stories about work in the industries that they are in and how fair pay agreements will really improve things for them. So it's sort of a bit of a taste test, I suppose, of what some of the submissions are, which we'll then hand over to the Minister and hear a few words from him as well. Before we kick off, just quickly, if you do need to use a bathroom, they're out through the main door. That's also the fire exit. There's another one behind if we need to, and if we do need to evacuate, then we will meet on Hopetown Street over that way. So if you go out the front, turn to your right, and if you go out the back, turn to your left, and we'll meet on Hopetown Street if we need to. All right, that's everything from me. Our first speaker that I would like to introduce is Rachel McIntosh. Rachel is the Vice President of the Council of Trade Unions. She's also an Assistant National Secretary at CTU Union, and I'd like to welcome you up to speak now to us, Rachel. Thank you very much.
E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e rai rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko tangata tiriti te iwi, no ko te rananga tupuna, ko te kauai kai mahi me e tūngauni ana, ko Rachel McIntosh, ahau. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. It's great to be here on Speak Up Sunday, and I want to acknowledge the speakers who will be speaking up after me, working people who will be telling their stories. Stories are really vital to changing the world. We're here to change the world. We're here in this place. I would like to acknowledge this church, which has been a place to change the world for more than 100 years. Harriet Morrison, an early suffragist and woman trade unionist, worshipped here. The Workers' Education Association, which was responsible for really building workers' power and increasing the confidence and knowledge of working people, met here in the mid-20th century. The Polynesian Panthers, definitely after changing the world, met here in the 1970s. And more recently, this place was sanctuary to some Indian students who were under threat of deportation. So this is the place that we are in, and it is a place to change the world. And I'm very delighted to be here to do that. I want to next acknowledge Helen Kelly. Now, Helen Kelly did the foundational work for fair pay agreements, which is what we're here for today. We're here to speak up. As Melissa said, we'll be handing over a heavy pile of submissions to Minister Wood. Acknowledge you too, Minister Wood. It's great to have you here and to know that you come from a movement that also is here to change the world, as is your government. So Helen's work on fair pay agreements came from an international recognition that extended collective bargaining across industries and across occupations is vital for decent work. It reduces inequality and it gives people a really decent place in society. So what we are working towards here, and acknowledge the government on that, is commonplace internationally. It's commonplace, so it's at once really, really ordinary and revolutionary. So it will make a huge difference to working people's lives in Aotearoa, and we will hear from some of them shortly. But it's also perfectly ordinary. Fair pay agreements, in the name, is fair pay. When Helen was working on them, she called them industry standard agreements. And those standards are about more than just pay. They really are about decent work through decent conditions, good health and safety, having a voice at work, health and safety including mental health, and the right to stand up, negotiate pay, and that those negotiations go right across industries. There is no reason why anybody should be left behind. And this legislation that we are working towards can be revolutionary, because currently there are a lot of people on this land who are left behind. And industry bargaining, industry-wide bargaining, is a vital tool for decent work. So that's really the points I wanted to make. It is great to be here. I do have the honour, as Vice President of the Council of Trade Unions, of representing 300,000 working people, but the reality of those 300,000 people's lives comes from their individual stories, and I think the next speaker will give you an individual story. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker today. Tasi Tuangamala is a security guard, and he's also an etu leader, and I'd like to welcome you up now, Tasi, to speak to us all. Thank you very much. Hold it nice and close.
Testing. Malo lavra soifua maumalang ma. My name is Tasi Tuangamala. I've been a security officer for around 7 to 9 years. I kind of got dragged along with Ete Vise and Vala, the CTU Union members, to encourage me. First, I'd like to say thank you, Minister, for your time and for fighting for fair pay agreements. So personally, myself, I've been a bit of a workaholic. It's kind of been stuck in this capital rat race that I've been in, and it's kind of gone to a point where it's kind of got to me mentally. So last year, my dad had cancer, and it kind of got to a point of, like, how am I going to resolve this issue? How am I gonna pay for certain things? Working a lot was kind of my getaway, but in a poisonous way that it's gotten to me. I lost so much valuable time with my father during his final days, and I thought work was the answer, and that mentally poisoned me as a capitalistic way that this was a rat race. You know, it's a way of survival, and this year now, there's something that I kind of regret. I lost losing my father when I got up being, spending my time with him. So that is something that is why I fought for fair pay agreements. It's for the fair rights of other people to understand the difference between what a contractor and an employee is, to stop that race from the bottom. Because a lot of us, what my dad taught me was, life is a journey, it's never a competition. But the way that the capitalistic world works is kind of what affects a lot of us. So for fair pay agreements, not only for myself, but to give back to a community, to give back to the people. Because we are not your liabilities, we are your assets. And we are what makes cash flow and your company grow. And all we ask for is that you give us value, and that's the whole point of why I fight for fair pay agreements. We look at it now, and it's a lot of millennials now coming in. So we have to be the manakitanga for the younger generation, and I feel that's where myself and others around us need to import ourselves. Fair pay agreements is also a living wage. Things are changing economically, and inflations are skyrocketing in the roof, so this fair pay will help a lot of us to, I don't want what happened to me to happen to others. I want them to spend social life with family, their ainga, whānau, because we never know what tomorrow brings. So this is the whole point for fair pay agreement for me. And yeah, so pay for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tassie, for speaking and for sharing that really personal story. And I'm sure anyone in this room or listening at home, who has lost someone or needed the time and space to care for a loved one, a family member, or a friend, or dependents. Life is complicated and messy, and things happen that we need to be able to be there for, and it's about more than just working and having to work really long hours in order just to make ends meet, and feeling the pressure to do that is something that isn't compatible with all of the other things which make life worth living, with family and community and all of the things that actually make life wonderful. So thank you very much for sharing that story. That was really beautiful, and a reminder that a world in which we can work reasonable hours for fair pay is something that's absolutely worth striving for. Thank you. Our next speaker is Xavier Walsh. Xavier works in hospitality, and he's also a member of Unite Union, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome him to speak to us today as well. Thanks very much, Xavier.
Thank you, Mel. Kia ora koutou. So my name is Xavier Walsh. I'm co-president of Unite Union and a hospo worker. I work at Macca's. We've all gathered here today on May Day for this event, Stand Up Sunday, a nationwide day of action. We've heard so much already about fair pay agreements today and the impact they will have on so many industries. Hospitality is no different. Like so many young people in Aotearoa, I've been hospo for a few years. This is my 6th year. However, like so many others, I still earn very little in the industry. Despite 2.5 years of work experience at Macca's, I currently only earn 65 cents above the minimum wage. However, hospo is a job like so many others. We rely on it to pay our bills, to ensure we have a roof over our head and food in our bellies. FPAs are the future. A change in legislation unlike anything seen by workers of this generation, and what's being hailed as the greatest improvement in industrial relations in a generation. I feel that I am here today to reaffirm the message that FPAs will improve the lives of so many Kiwis and their families by lifting the wages of some of our lowest paid workers. FPAs will ensure that tens of thousands more hospo workers will have access to bargaining in a way that is near impossible with current legislation. The many thousands of hospo workers have created a race to the bottom where it is workers who suffer at the end of the day. FPAs will create new minimum standards which must be paid within an industry littered with unfair working conditions. It is a lived reality in hospo that there are bad employers who don't pay the minimum wage, give out breaks, have end times for shifts, let alone care about workplace health and safety. I've had a few of them, but I've also had some really amazing employers who pay well, ensure that we're well looked after, and we receive fair compensation for our work. FPAs are going to be the change workers need in the coming years as the future of work continues to change. They will create a place for younger future generations to have a fairer playing field in the world of work than the one we have had to navigate. It seems particularly fitting that today is May Day, so we can remember and celebrate all of the achievements and work done to better workers' rights. We're having this conversation FPAs here and now, but we'll go out there when this legislation is passed. We'll have these conversations with our co-workers about fair working conditions and ways in which we can lessen exploitation in our workplaces. We should get a fair go out of our work, and FPAs will help ensure that.
Thank you very much, Xavier. And I think that point that you raise about, there being so many workers currently who don't have access to collective bargaining is such a salient one. for union members who do have the ability to bargain collectively and experience what it is to, have that solidarity with your colleagues and also, have a unified voice to improve terms and conditions and your rate of pay. That's such a powerful feeling and something which I think, we all want for everyone to have access to. And it's something that's really exciting about fair pay agreements. So thank you very much for speaking to us. All right, our third speaker is Cavabalu. So Rose is a cleaner and she's also an E2 leader, and it's my pleasure to welcome her up to the stage to speak to us now. Thanks, Rose.
Tulo. Tulo, tulo. Malalele to you all, and so good to see you, my God. My name is Rose Cavabalu, a Tongan woman, a mother, grandmother, a woman leader for one of our Tongan churches here in Auckland, and one of the leaders representing cleaners who are members of our great union, CTU Union. I'm a cleaner and very proud of the work I do. And I have been cleaning for 17 years, now for the police stations. Today, I would like to thank you, Minister, and your government for delivering on the pay agreements to get us where we are now. The first reading and the submissions now. But my thanks also goes to all my CTU Union whānau and their communities for all your great mahi, as well in continuing to put pressure on the government to deliver on the fair pay agreements. Thank you. But we still have a long way to go until fair pay agreement becomes law. And there are things in there that we know need to be added to the FPA bill to be more fair to workers. Listening to my other fellow cleaners, upskilling and ongoing training at work is very important to them. We are sick and tired of being labeled as unskilled, low-paid workers, treated like slaves, always the first to get blamed when things goes missing at workplace, even though we didn't take them. Some people in the community and society as a whole always look down on us cleaners. They never acknowledge us or even to say hello. But during the pandemic, all of a sudden, people started to acknowledge us. We are human beings too that deserve to be treated with respect. We also have dreams and inspiration for the future. Some of us would like to move up the ladder as well as become supervisors and managers, or even run our own business, cleaning businesses in the future. For the past 17 years, I've been cleaning. Not once, not even once, I have ever been offered training to become a supervisor, even though I ask my manager all the time. The only training I have been offered are by my union. The telecates training, the marketing, and the campaigning. And I'm so grateful, very grateful for that. But what we as cleaners need is formal training by our cleaning companies, so we could become supervisors and managers. If this government is seriously about making Aotearoa New Zealand a high-wage economy and high-skilled country to reduce inequality and poverty in our communities and respect us, then walk the talk and make training and upskilling to be mandatory to agree. I repeat, mandatory to agree instead of just mandatory to discuss. Kia kaha, workers, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rose, for that, for speaking to us in such a heartfelt way. And I think that, you know, what you've touched on there about how long people can work, how long people can serve their communities, 17 years and not receiving training. And I think that it's not so much to ask that we, you know, are able to upskill and better ourselves in work as well, and that is something that everyone benefits from as well. So absolutely hear you in that call for skills and training to be an essential part of fair pay agreements. There's a huge opportunity there for all of us. So thank you very much, Rose. All right, we have reached our final member speaker now, and so I would very much like to welcome Imogen Held to speak to us. Imogen works in ECE and is an NZEI member. Thanks, Imogen.
Kia ora koutou, ko Imogen Aho. I'm an early childhood teacher. I also work for a not-for-profit organisation, and I have a collective agreement. The core value of fair pay agreements is about unity and equity for all working in the sector. And hear me when I say that ECE kaiako and staff desperately need this for our mahi. I'm in the minority. Only 2,000 early childhood teachers across sector are covered by a collective agreement. There's 38,000 teachers currently working who are not covered by a collective agreement. And ECE is dominated by profit-driven businesses. And the fastest way to increase their profits is to slash wages and slash terms and conditions, which creates a dire working situation for the teachers, and ultimately it is the tamariki that suffer, because our working conditions is what the tamariki experience each and every day. Currently, and another issue is COVID-19. If you get COVID-19 or you're identified as a household contact, I'm lucky. My employer has already said we will receive our full wages and we will not come out of any of our entitlements. There are teachers across this country that have been told to use their sick leave. If they have no sick leave, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Employers are not prepared to apply for the wage subsidy. And so teachers who are already on incredibly low wages are suddenly worried, going, I've got COVID-19, but how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to make things work? Despite there being the first 5 steps of pay parity, this is opt-in, so not every single teacher has access to the first 5 steps, and some don't have any access to it all, and there is still a significant pay difference between teachers who work under the Kindergarten Teachers Collective and those who work for different employers. This means that there is no uniformity across the sector. There is no uniformity for non-contact time, for sick leave, for annual leave, for pandemic leave, for health and safety, for ratios, for whether or not staff meetings are paid or unpaid. There are teachers who have been asked to work incredibly long hours, and they're not valued and they're not respected, and they're not treated as though they have a 4-year teaching qualification, like the teachers who work in the kindergarten do, or like the teachers who work in the compulsory sector. There is a crisis in ECE that has been acknowledged for many years, but very little has been done to address it. As a result, many teachers are leaving the profession and enrolment in initial teacher education is falling. We need the government to deliver on some of their key promises to the sector. If promises are delivered upon, it may change the current reality that ECE is not a desired career due to pay and conditions we work in. I was one of those teachers who left the sector. In 2014, I left New Zealand to go overseas to work in international schools where I got incredible pay, terms and conditions, and incredible resources. The pandemic happened, I came home, and I was still one of the lucky ones who got into an incredible centre with an incredible employer. But for 38,000 teachers, this is not the reality. For 38,000 teachers, they're going to work with holes in their shoes. They can't afford food. They're struggling to make their rent payments. They don't have money for bond. They're worrying, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to pay back my student loan for this qualification I get? The crisis directly affects tamariki. We know from science the importance of the first 1,000 days for brain development. But when teachers are leaving the sector or moving frequently from centre to centre, trying to find a centre where they are valued and respected, and centres are struggling to fill positions due to a significant teacher shortage, it is the tamariki who suffer because they spend the majority of their first 1,000 days in ECE. There is no second chance. There is no do-over for those first 1,000 days. A fair pay agreement would enable the industry to come together and reach an agreement on issues such issues most important to teachers, such as non-contact time, ratios, and safe working conditions. A teacher is a teacher is a teacher is a teacher, and fair pay agreements could help us reach this goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imogen. So important that we are supporting ECE teachers because you're looking after and helping to grow the next generation. That's something that everyone benefits from, that we as a society should really be valuing. And so the opportunity that fair pay agreements poses to make changes in the ECE sector is clearly so valuable. All right, so those are all of our speakers. And what we're going to do now is, if I could ask everyone to come up, Minister will present you with the submissions, and then it would be wonderful if we could have a few words from you as well. So if everyone could come up. So we have over 1,100 submissions, which we would like to present to you, Minister, but I'd like to acknowledge that this is just what we've got to date, and there are definitely more coming. We have more coming in every day, and we'll keep collecting these until submissions close as well. And so submissions will be closing in the middle of May. You've still got a couple of weeks. If you haven't made a submission yet, please do that, but would like to present to you with what we've got so far already. Okay. Actually, should we take a photo altogether? Sorry, Rose, shall we? Thank you. All right. We can pop them back in the box if you'd like, Minister.
E whakawhitai ana ki te kaihanga, e mihi ana ki te tangata. E te kaihanga tēnā koe, e ranganui, e papa tuanuku, tēnā korua. E ngā mate, haere, haere, haere. E te honga ora, e te hau kāinga, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. And a very happy May Day, International Workers' Day, and Speak Up Sunday. It is so good to be with you here today on a very special day in which people all over the world celebrate working people and the contribution that working people make to our societies. And we've just heard 4 very powerful stories about what it's like to work in our labour market in our country at the moment, and the work that we have to do collectively to be respectful of that work and to make sure that people can carry out that work and live lives that are inherently dignified and just. And I want to thank all of our speakers for their stories and their contributions today, because it really told the story of why we are moving forward with fair pay agreements. Tassi, when you spoke really movingly about your dad, and we all think of you and your family in that situation, you reminded us of the fact that work affects every part of our lives, that the way that we're treated at work, the conditions we experience, the flexibility or the inflexibility that we have to be there for the people that we care about is shaped by our working lives. And you didn't necessarily have it when you needed it. And that's not right, and that's something that we need to fix. Xavier, you spoke to us about your experience in hospitality, a sector in which tens of thousands of people, in particular our young people, work. You reminded us of something really interesting in your comments as well, which is that there are many employers in your sector and others who want to do the right thing. But the way that our labour market works at the moment means that sometimes it's those employers that get disadvantaged and the cowboys who get an advantage. And that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like we're setting the right incentives for either employers or for the way that the employees are treated. Rose, we've met and spoken before, and your passion for the ability of workers in your sector and others to have access to skills development and training comes through so strongly. And you remind us that working people should be able to dream a little bit. Work shouldn't just be a drudge. You should be respected for the work that you do, and you should have the ability to plan ahead, to dream big, to be able to move forward in your life and your work. And we need that for all workers, including cleaners. Imogen, firstly, great to see you again. Pass on my thanks to your brother-in-law for looking after Thomas yesterday for me as well. You reminded us of something really important, and it reflects back to something that Rachel said before as well, when she was speaking about Helen Kelly, which is that we know here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and all around the world, that one of the ways in which workers can reach towards fair, decent, and dignified pay and conditions is through collective bargaining. Generation after generation, it has been shown to be the way in which workers can move towards those outcomes, in which we can equalise the inherent imbalance of power that often exists in the employment relationship. But that we have, after 30 years of deregulation in the New Zealand labour market, so many workers who don't have access to collective bargaining. And in a sector like ECAE, that difference shows up so starkly, and you described that really well. Well, Helen Kelly's vision, which was courageous when she spoke about it at the time, and was not always supported in the union movement when she spoke about it at the time, was to make sure that all workers had access to the benefits of collective bargaining and the inherent dignity and the inherent voice that that brings with it. And so the vision that we're all moving towards now through fair pay agreements is about picking that up and making sure that we have an inclusive vision for how workers are treated and how workers have a voice within New Zealand. So I thank all of you for bringing forward your own stories and really speaking to quite different parts and different reasons for why this work ahead of us is so important. And in the months that are ahead, this is what is going to matter. We're taking the Fair Pay Agreement legislation through Parliament. Now government is committed to making it happen, and we will make it happen in Parliament. And so by the end of this year, we will have Fair Pay Agreement legislation, and that process will be able to start. But we need to do more than that. We need to make sure that fair pay agreements are understood by the people in our communities. We need to make sure that they are supported, and we need to make sure that they become an enduring part of the social fabric of New Zealand. We need to build something up here that is here not just for the workers of today, but for the workers of tomorrow, come what may. And so the work that is in front of all of us is to make sure that this is something that people know about and that people support out there in our communities. And the way to do that is to get the stories of our workers out there, the stories of those workers who got our country through the pandemic. And, I think about my week, the week that's just gone by for me. I think of the bus driver who, saw me running up the street on Dominion Road, stopped to let me get on. Those bus drivers who kept our cities and our towns moving often had to deal with aggression and tension, but they kept coming to work because they knew it was so important for our communities. I think of our cleaners. I leave work at Parliament often at 11 o'clock at night. The person I say goodbye to as I walk out past the front desk is one of the security guards, staying there, keeping us safe. But the people who will come in after me at night and make sure that our offices are clean and hygienic will be our cleaners at Parliament and in offices and workplaces all over the country. I think of those supermarket checkout workers and retail staff who still face real challenges and have kept us supplied with the goods that we need to keep our country going as well. These are the people who have kept our country going, who have been undervalued for so long. And in our society, so often we're told work's important. We get this cultural message all the time. You should work hard. You need to go to work. That's how you contribute. And perhaps if you don't, perhaps you're not so worthy. We hear it from opposition politicians who tell us people shouldn't be on the benefit. They should be at work. It's embedded in our society that work is important. And most of us would recognise that there is an importance in work and providing your labour to do something for your society. You feel a sense of contribution when you work and you do something useful for the community. But if those are our values, how can it be right and how can it be consistent that so many people doing that work that is so essential end up getting paid less than what it is possible to live a dignified life on? And that is what we are remedying with fair pay agreements. As Rachel Hunter said, it won't change overnight, but it starts to mean that workers have a voice, and we can work on all of those issues that we heard about today. I finally want to thank our host at the Unitarian Church here for having us here for Speak Up Sunday, and I just want to reflect on some of the words that are up here about the principles inherent in your tradition, and that very first one, because that's what we are about here today, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That is what has guided us in the Labour movement and the Labour Party for generations. And those are the values that we are bringing forth and giving new expression to through fair pay agreements. So I thank all of you for the work so far, for getting those submissions in, for sharing your story. There is much more work ahead of us over the coming months, but together we will make this change for working New Zealanders. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your words and for all of the work that you and your government have done to date to make fair pay agreements a reality, and that the work that you will continue to do in the next few stages as we see legislation move through the House and then ultimately become a reality as well. And that's when it becomes, the work of the union movement as well to make the most of that opportunity which is being presented. And I think that, your words about how important it is that we ensure that fair pay agreements become, part of the fabric of society is a challenge to us all to make the most of that opportunity. And so I'd like to acknowledge the work of your government, of the speakers here today, of the unions who are represented, of Helen Kelly and of everyone who's come before us to bring us to this point. Thank you all very much for your contributions as we work towards seeing fair pay agreements become a reality and ultimately improve the lives of working people as well. So thank you all very much. Thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you to everyone who's watching from home. Have a very happy May Day, a very happy International Workers' Day, and solidarity to you all. Thanks very much. What I would like to do now, for those of you in the room, is to see if we could get a photo up the front with you, Minister. So anybody that would like to join in for a photo up the front, in front of the banner with the submissions and the Minister, that would be great if we could all gather around behind the table, possibly. You don't have to if you don't want to be in a photo, but if you would like to, please come up to the front. And then please hang around as well, because we've got some refreshments also for afterwards. So thank you very much, everyone.